Wars do not truly end when the guns fall silent. They end in quieter moments, at lonely checkpoints, along muddy roads, in brief exchanges between strangers who do not yet realize history is standing in front of them. Empires collapse slowly. Authority dissolves piece by piece. Titles lose meaning. Uniforms become disguises rather than symbols of power. In the spring of 1945, Europe was filled with men trying to disappear. Generals traded medals for civilian coats. Intelligence officers burned files that had once controlled entire nations. Loyal servants of the Third Reich abandoned ideology overnight and joined the endless columns of refugees moving through a defeated Germany. Among them walked a man who had helped design one of the most terrifying systems of power the modern world had ever seen. For more than a decade, he had ruled from the shadows. He commanded secret police forces, oversaw concentration camps, and built an empire of surveillance and terror that reached across an entire continent. Now he believed he could survive defeat, not by fighting, but by negotiation. He believed the victors would still need him. He was wrong. This is the story of Heinrich Himmler's final days, the failed escape of the man who thought he was indispensable. The bridge in northern Germany. Northern Germany. May 23, 1945. The Third Reich was finished. Berlin had fallen. Adolf Hitler was dead. German armies surrendered in fragments across Europe. What remained was chaos, shattered infrastructure, starving civilians, and millions of displaced soldiers searching for safety or anonymity. Roads were crowded with carts, bicycles, wounded veterans, and families carrying everything they owned. No one knew who still held authority. Rumors moved faster than armies. Near the town of Bremerwörde, a small bridge became one of thousands of improvised checkpoints established by Allied forces. A British field security patrol stood watch. Their mission was clear: identify fugitives, screen travelers, and capture senior Nazis attempting to escape justice. Intelligence reports warned that high-ranking officials were moving north, disguised as ordinary soldiers. Late that afternoon, 3 men approached the checkpoint on foot. They did not attract immediate attention. Each wore a long gray Wehrmacht overcoat, stained by travel and dust. They carried minimal luggage. Their pace was cautious, but steady, like countless defeated soldiers passing through Allied lines. One man stepped forward. He was short, slightly stooped, and visibly tired. His hairline had receded. A black patch covered his left eye. Nothing about him suggested importance. He looked like a middle-aged sergeant, exhausted by months of retreat. He calmly handed over identification papers. The documents named him Sergeant Heinrich Himmler, assigned to the secret field police. The British soldiers examined the papers carefully. At first glance, everything appeared correct, and yet something felt wrong. The documents were unusually clean for a man traveling through a collapsing country. The ink stamps looked fresh. The folds were sharp, almost untouched by weather or hardship. More troubling was the man himself. He did not carry the physical exhaustion common among German troops captured in recent weeks. His posture remained composed. His hands were soft. His face showed stress, but not deprivation. This was not a man who had slept in bomb craters or marched for weeks without food. The patrol exchanged glances. Suspicion grew quietly. None of them realized that history had just arrived at their checkpoint. The hidden architect revealed. The man calling himself Heinrich Himmler was not a sergeant. He was Heinrich Himmler, Reichsführer SS, one of the most powerful figures of Nazi Germany. For 12 years, Himmler had stood at the center of the regime's machinery of terror. As head of the SS, he controlled the Gestapo, the concentration camp network, and vast intelligence operations that monitored millions of people across Europe. If Hitler represented the public face of dictatorship, Himmler was its administrator, the man who transformed ideology into organized violence. He rarely appeared dramatic. He did not inspire crowds with speeches or theatrical gestures. Instead, he governed through paperwork, regulations, and meticulous planning. Genocide under Himmler became bureaucratic. He designed systems, measured efficiency, and demanded statistical reports on death itself. Now, the same man who once commanded armies of black uniformed SS officers stood in a muddy road pretending to be anonymous. He believed he could still shape his own fate. A dangerous illusion. By early 1945, as Germany collapsed under Allied assault, Himmler retreated into fantasy. He convinced himself that the Western Allies, Britain and the United States, would soon view him not as a criminal, but as a necessary administrator. Europe would need order, he believed. Someone would have to control police forces, manage prisoners, and resist Soviet expansion. In his imagination, he was not defeated. He was preparing for negotiation. Himmler genuinely believed he might sit across a table from Allied commanders, perhaps even shake hands with General Dwight Eisenhower, and present himself as a partner against communism. He failed to grasp a simple reality. His name was already synonymous with mass murder. To Allied investigators, he was not a political figure. He was one of the primary architects of crimes against humanity. Betrayal in the Führer bunker, April 1945. Berlin burned under Soviet artillery. Inside the Führer bunker, Adolf Hitler faced inevitable defeat. Himmler made his move. Traveling to Lübeck, he secretly contacted Swedish diplomat Count Folke Bernadotte and offered a shocking proposal. Germany would surrender to Western forces while continuing the fight against the Soviet Union in the East. He hoped to preserve part of the regime and save himself. The plan collapsed almost immediately. When the BBC broadcast news of the negotiations, Hitler heard the announcement inside his bunker. The reaction was furious. Hitler denounced Himmler as a traitor, stripped him of all authority, and ordered his arrest. The man once described as his most loyal follower had, in Hitler's eyes, committed unforgivable betrayal. In a single moment, Himmler lost everything. No protection, no political future, no place within the collapsing Reich. He became a fugitive, hunted by both enemies and former allies. The attempt to disappear. Himmler now faced an impossible problem. He was one of the most recognizable men in Europe, so he attempted to erase himself. He shaved his distinctive mustache. He discarded his immaculate SS uniform. He replaced polished boots with worn field equipment. A black eye patch altered his appearance. Forged documents gave him a new identity, Heinrich Himmler, an identity taken from a real German soldier. Himmler literally borrowed the life of a dead man. Accompanied by 2 aides, he moved north through the chaos of surrender, blending into the endless flow of refugees and soldiers. Yet even in disguise, his habits betrayed him. He walked with authority. His papers carried secret field police credentials intended to command respect rather than avoid scrutiny. What he did not know was that British intelligence had already issued specific instructions. Anyone carrying secret field police identification was to be detained immediately. Step by step, unknowingly, Heinrich Himmler walked directly toward capture and toward the final collapse of the illusion that had sustained him to the very end. The checkpoint decision, May 23, 1945. At the small bridge near Bremervörde, the British soldiers completed their inspection without realizing the magnitude of the moment. The papers were examined again. The stamp of the secret field police caught their attention, but the name meant nothing to them. They saw only a suspicious sergeant, another displaced functionary from a defeated regime. "Get in the truck," one of the soldiers ordered. The short man with the eye patch obeyed immediately. Heinrich Himmler did not protest. He did not argue rank or authority. He climbed silently into the back of the vehicle alongside the other detainees. The truck pulled away from the checkpoint, carrying with it one of the most powerful men of Nazi Germany, now reduced to an anonymous prisoner among many. He was transported to the British 31 civilian interrogation camp near Lüneburg. The camp reflected the chaos of post-war Germany. Prisoners arrived hourly, soldiers shouted instructions, intelligence officers attempted to identify fugitives using incomplete lists and fading photographs. The war had ended, but the work of accountability had only begun. And somewhere inside that confusion, history waited for recognition. The suspicion at Lüneburg. Captain Thomas Sylvester, a British interrogation officer, quickly noticed something unusual. 3 prisoners had arrived together, yet their behavior did not match ordinary soldiers. The 2 accompanying men treated the shorter prisoner with remarkable deference. They carried his belongings. They stepped aside when he moved. Even in captivity, hierarchy remained visible. Sylvester had seen enough officers attempting disguise to trust instinct over paperwork. He ordered the short man brought to his office for personal questioning. It was a quiet decision, but one that would change the course of post-war justice. The moment of revelation. Inside the interrogation room, Himmler understood the situation instantly. His disguise was unraveling. He feared something more than Allied interrogation. If placed among ordinary German prisoners, recognition could mean death. Many Germans now blamed Nazi leaders for the destruction of their country. Betrayal, surrender, and collapse had turned former loyalties into rage. Himmler made a calculated choice. he would reveal himself. Slowly, he stood. He removed the black eye patch. Then he placed his familiar round wire-rimmed glasses back onto his face, the unmistakable symbol of his public image. Looking directly at Captain Sylvester, he spoke quietly. "I am Heinrich Himmler." He expected recognition, perhaps even formal respect. For years, his name had commanded fear across Europe. Sylvester's response was devastatingly ordinary. "Oh, it's you." No salute followed, no ceremony, no acknowledgement of status. At that moment, the illusion shattered. The Reichsführer SS was no longer a ruler. He was simply a prisoner of the British Army. From power to prisoner, Sylvester immediately contacted intelligence headquarters. "We have Himmler." The reply came without hesitation. "Search him thoroughly. Strip him. Ensure he carries no poison." Allied intelligence knew senior Nazis frequently concealed cyanide capsules to avoid trial. Himmler himself had overseen a regime where suicide was often preferred over accountability. The guards ordered him to undress. Himmler resisted. "I am a Reichsführer," he protested weakly. The title meant nothing now. A British sergeant major ordered the guards forward. Himmler was forcibly stripped and left standing naked in the cold examination room, a stark reversal of power. The man who had ordered millions, stripped, humiliated, and processed, now faced the same treatment. History had turned full circle. The search. Army physician Captain Clement Wells conducted the medical examination. Himmler's clothing was inspected carefully. Despite a thorough search that revealed nothing suspicious, Himmler still carried a concealed cyanide capsule hidden inside his mouth. It remained undetected. For a moment, it appeared the danger had passed. Himmler behaved calmly, almost cooperatively, but Wells remained cautious. He instructed the prisoner to open his mouth. Himmler complied. As the doctor leaned closer with a light, he noticed something hidden between the prisoner's cheek and teeth, another capsule cleverly concealed. "Spit it out!" Wells shouted, reaching forward. Himmler understood instantly. There would be no negotiation, no political relevance, no meeting with Allied commanders. Only trial, humiliation, and execution. He pulled his head back sharply and bit down. The suicide. The glass capsule shattered. Potassium cyanide flooded his mouth. Himmler collapsed instantly. British soldiers reacted in panic. They seized him, lifting his body upside down in a desperate attempt to expel the poison. Guards attempted artificial respiration and emergency medical treatment in a desperate effort to keep him alive. Medical equipment was rushed into the room. Chaos replaced order. The head of the SS, naked, powerless, was shaken by soldiers fighting to keep him alive long enough to face justice. "We need him for Nuremberg," an officer shouted. But cyanide works with ruthless speed. Within minutes, convulsions slowed. Breathing failed. The struggle ended. After 15 minutes, Heinrich Himmler was dead. He lay motionless beneath an army blanket on the floor of the interrogation room. The architect of terror had escaped the courtroom. Denying a martyr. British commanders were furious. They had wanted testimony. They wanted the world to hear evidence directly from one of the principal architects of Nazi crimes. Instead, they had a corpse. Determined to prevent myth-making, they photographed the body immediately. Harsh, unflattering images showing Himmler lifeless on the floor, glasses still resting on his face. The photographs were released to the press. The message was deliberate. This was no fallen hero. This was a defeated criminal who chose suicide over responsibility. The secret burial. Another problem remained. What should be done with the body? Intelligence officers warned that any marked grave could become a shrine for future extremists. The British made a final decision. Himmler would be denied even the dignity of remembrance. Early on May 26, 1945, 4 soldiers quietly loaded the body into a truck. They drove into the desolate expanse of Lüneburg Heath, far from towns or witnesses. No priest accompanied them. No ceremony was held. No words were spoken. At a random location deep within the forest, they dug a shallow grave. The body was placed inside, covered with earth, then hidden beneath leaves and branches until the ground appeared untouched. The exact location was deliberately withheld from public record. The soldiers swore secrecy. To this day, the exact burial site remains unknown. The man who dreamed of monuments and eternal legacy vanished into anonymity beneath the German soil. The end of the SS shadow. Other Nazi leaders faced judgment. Göring stood trial before choosing suicide. Others listened as verdicts were read aloud before the world. Himmler chose death to avoid that moment. Some Allied officers later described such suicides as acts of men unwilling to face judgment. Whether history agrees or not, Himmler's end marked the symbolic collapse of the SS itself. An organization that had terrorized continents dissolved with its leader lying helpless on an interrogation room floor, defeated not by armies, but by a routine medical inspection. A different kind of justice. There was no dramatic trial, no public confession, no final speech. History often seeks theatrical endings for its villains. Yet Himmler's fate carried its own grim form of justice. He wished to be remembered as a great historical figure, the architect of a new order. Instead, he became an unmarked grave in a forgotten forest, another body among millions lost to the war he helped create. He escaped the hangman's rope with a single bite, but he could not escape history. What do you think? Should Himmler have been kept alive at all costs to stand trial at Nuremberg, or was his death in that interrogation room a fitting end? Tell me your thoughts in the comments.